All right, thank you so much for your patience. Uh, technology, you can have a little difficulty at times, and so, but we certainly appreciate you hanging in there with us. And thank you so much for allowing us to know what was going on. But the last thing I said to you was our words will always reflect what is already in our hearts. Remember, we're talking about watch your mouth. Watch your mouth. And Mama said, watch your mouth. And so our last words were our words will always reflect what is already in our hearts. So now if you said something like, oh man, they got this thing messed up and that thought was already in your heart. You have thought about it before. Maybe we had a technical difficulty before and you said something. Well, guess what? It happens. But let's get back. We're talking about the seriousness of speech. And my second point is, what's that in your heart? You see, the heart defiles you when its contents pass through your mouth. In other words, selfishness, dishonesty, insecurity, envy, ugly words. That's what defiles us when it passes through our mouth. It is not the things that proceed from our heart is what defiles us. And it's not about washing your hands. Well, let me say this. COVID-19 has taught us we need to wash our hands. But it's more what's on the inside that defiles us than anything. So, in fact, Matthew 17 through 20 says, don't you realize that whatever goes into the mouth passes into the stomach and is eliminated? But what comes out of the mouth comes from the heart. And this defiles a person. For from the heart comes evil thoughts, murders, adulterers, sexual immoralities, thefts, false testimonies, slander. These are the things that defile a person. But eating with unwashed hands, that doesn't defile a person. So, now let's move on. Let me say something else about the mouth. In 1866, there was an invention that changed the world. And that was the year that Alfred Nobel developed the first safe but powerful explosive called dynamite. Until that time, people used either gunpowder or nitroglycerin to build roads or do any other construction project that require an explosiveness. Now, Nobel's dynamite brought destruction, and dynamite quickly became an accurate and deadly force as a weapon of war, because dynamite could be accurate, but it could be deadly. And so it could bring people together, dynamite, or it could blow people apart. And in fact, let me just stop and say here, that's why Alfred Nobel was so discouraged that dynamite, that he was making it for good, had turned into something like they used for war and killing people. That what he did is he started the Nobel Prize. He did not want to be remembered for dynamite, but for the Nobel Prize. And many of us probably you sit there and say, oh, I didn't know Alfred Nobel invented dynamite. Well, he was the inventor of dynamite. but we remember the Nobel Peace Prize and the Nobel other prizes more so than the dynamite. But what if I say you have similar power like dynamite in you? We have an access to something so strong for good or for evil that we can bring life or death into a situation or to somebody's life on a regular basis. Now, here's your point that I want you to think about. How is the mouth like dynamite? How's the mouth like dynamite? And I'm glad you asked the question. The mouth has the power to destroy anything in its path. And as I said earlier, many of us like to say, well, you know me, I say what I mean what I say. I just couldn't help, you know me, I just have to say it. Shut up is what sometimes we need to do, is shut up. Ecclesiastes says there's a time to speak and there's a time to refrain from speaking. Many of us have gone in to visit the sick and we leave them more discouraged because we don't know what to say. Or we go and visit somebody who is in grief because of the loss of a loved one. And because we don't know what to say, we say the wrong thing. We trivialize things. We go trivial, well, the Lord, he know what he's doing. Yeah, I know what the Lord know what he's doing. But we don't need you to trivialize that thing. And the muscle in the mouth is no small thing. I mean, some couples have gotten divorced because of the sticks of dynamite that blew the marriage apart. Some people have not spoken to family members for years because you said something when you should have kept your mouth shut. We don't know when to speak. James chapter 3 says, dear brothers and sisters, not many of you should become teachers in the church. Woo! For we who teach will be judged more strictly. Indeed, we all make many mistakes. For if we could control our tongues, we would be perfect and could also control ourselves in every other way. We can make a large horse go wherever we want by means of a small bit in his mouth. And we saw that just this past week in the Derby. That's just a small bit in the horse's mouth. And this little man sitting on top of this big old horse. But he can control it. And a small rudder makes a huge ship turn whenever the pilot chooses to go, even though the winds are strong. In the same way, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And among all the parts of the body, the tongue is a flame of fire. It is a whole world of wickedness, corrupting your entire body. It can set your whole life on fire, for it is set on fire by hell itself. People can tame all kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and fish, but no one can tame the tongue. It is restless and evil, full of deadly poison. Sometimes it praises our Lord and Father, and sometimes it curses those who have been made in the image of God. And so blessing and cursing comes pouring out of the same mouth. Surely, my brothers and sisters, this is not right. Does a spring of water bubble out with both fresh water and bitter water? Does a fig tree produce olives or a grapevine produce figs? No. And you can't draw fresh water from a salty spring. Now, let's look at this. James immediately gives a strong warning to teachers that we face a higher level of accountability anytime we bring God and His name into the conversation. We're held higher. You see, in other words, on Judgment Day, let's say it's Judgment Day, and now they call St. Stephen. Okay, we're going to have St. Stephen. St. Stephen, come on up here. And the first person they're going to call is Pastor Cosby. He's going to be held accountable. Well, I can't get too happy over him being first because right behind him, come here, Geneva. Whoa, I haven't had a chance to get my excuse together. So we teachers are held in high regards. Those who give spiritual instructions to others, now listen to me, whether formally or informally, will receive a stricter judgment. So let me get to the informally, because you think, yeah, you looking at me. See, I know what you're doing. But now I'm going to look at you. You're a mama, grandmama, a granddaddy, daddy, or sister, or older sister, or brother, or aunt, or somebody. And when you start giving you're going to be held accountable. Okay, so you think, well, I ain't going to teach you. Well, guess what? You're still going to be held accountable. God holds you accountable. See, that child that uses a word, you know what we call, like starts with the S, ends with the T, or we use a word that's like a BS or MF and all that kind. That didn't come in their vocabulary. They had to hear somebody say it. I'm talking to you. They heard you. You know, when sometimes I get so I don't even do it no more. You get on, what's that called, YouTube, and people done put a picture of their child, a little 2 or 3-year-old baby, dancing. And I'm thinking, they ain't got no business being able to dance doing that. They had to see somebody. They had to hear somebody. So, James tells us, and after this initial warning to teachers, he continues his lesson about our lips by establishing 3 unique things regarding the mouth. First, it directs life, because he said a small rudder can make a huge ship turn. That's directing. Or a small bit in a horse's mouth can turn the horse. So you can direct your life or somebody's life by what you say. Words of encouragement. And in fact, while I'm saying it, we need to speak words of encouragement over ourselves. And then James said, or you can damage life. He said, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but you got to watch the buts. I tell you that all the time. A tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. Just you saying just a few words. Well, all I said was, and you know that's what we say, well, all I said was. Well, that's all it takes. I can remember, just say here, it just rushed into me. And let me say this. Well, I hope I can remember that. But it carried me to another thing. There is no hurt like a church hurt. You got to be careful. We look at people. Oh, that dress is too short. Or that thing's not right. Well, I didn't like that song. Well, nobody's trying to please you. There's no hurt like a church hurt. I went to church one day. I had my little boots on because it was snow. It was bad weather out there. So I had the boots on. And I went in the church. And I had to go into the secretary's office to get something. And she said something about my boots. I was already kind of self-conscious of those boots. And she said something. And you don't know how many years it was before I put a boot on my feet again. Many of us, we go to the hospital and we visit people and we don't know what to say. I went to the hospital once, and here's what I did. I got a perm before I went because I wanted my hair to be straight because I knew I was getting ready to have surgery and I couldn't do anything, so I wanted my hair straight. And two people who called themselves missionaries came in, visit me, and they were both beauticians. And they said, "Whoa, look at your head." Well, I thought to myself, well, it's just straight. And when they left, I just had surgery, people. I got my rollers and began to roll my hair, put my arms up like that. I'd had surgery. So when the next visitor came, who happened to be my mother and sister, they couldn't believe. Because yesterday I looked good. Today here I was with a whole lot of oxygen mask and things on. Why? Because I was doing things I wasn't supposed to do because somebody said, "Ooh, what happened to your hair?" And so I thought I needed to roll my hair up, put some rollers in my hair, what I wasn't supposed to do. And now I was in an oxygen tent. All because somebody opened their mouth. And that's what we go to people, lost loved one. Well, you see the Lord. You don't know the Lord, what he's thinking or why he did something. So shut up. Because we damage life. Then he said we can determine life. It can praise God with our tongues, or we can hurt people with our tongues. We can determine the life. And let me make another point. A ship was sailing at night when it received a radio message. The message was simple yet clear. It said, "Turn south immediately. I am directly in front of you." And the captain of the ship did not want to turn south in the middle of the night or make any other changes to his ship's course. So he says, "I'm a Navy captain. Instead of me turning south, you turn north." And the captain waited briefly and then received another message. It says, "You're heading straight toward me. Turn south now." And the captain immediately sent back and said, "I will not do it. Because the message said, you turn south now, because I'm not going to turn north. And so the captain was irritated by this conversation. And so he sent back, and this person wasn't respecting his authority, wasn't respecting what he said. I'm a Navy captain. So he replied, this is my final statement. This is what the captain said. I'm a Navy captain. I will not turn south. You will turn north. And immediately, he barely had time to send that message before he received a stern reply, adamant about it. Said, you will turn south. I am a lighthouse, which means I'm not turning. First of all, can't turn. Second of all, I'm not going to turn. So my sisters and brothers, regardless of who you are or what ship or ministry you are steering, the lighthouse will never adjust to you. It does not matter how powerful a person you are, how long you've been president of the choir, how long you've been the director of Christian education, how powerful you think you are, how much education you have, what success you have had. You are in a ship in conflict with the lighthouse, and the lighthouse will win every single time. And unfortunately, many of us don't understand that. We believe we are setting our own course. We're making our own decisions. We can do anything. We expect everything to adjust around us except us. And we even expect God to adjust to us. But let me say this. God says, I'm the lighthouse. I say, you turn south, you turn south. No questions asked. God will never adjust to you. I can't make that any stronger. God will never adjust to you. Many of us like to dictate to God what we want him to do, where we want him to go, how we want him to respond. Look at Matthew 16:21 through 23. From then on, Jesus began to point out to his disciples that it was necessary, him, the lighthouse, to go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, be killed and be raised on the third day. Peter took him aside. The ship captain took him aside and began to rebuke the lighthouse, saying, oh no, Lord, this will never happen to you. Jesus turned and said to Peter, get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me because you're not thinking about God's concern, but human concern. And while I'm saying this, many of us, we're running our mouth. We won't take a vaccine shot, and then we want to stop others from taking a vaccine shot. But we want to know when the church going to open. The church ain't never been closed. But now you want to say, I don't believe. Who cares what you believe? Get the shot or get out of the way. But don't stop somebody else. Because you're not thinking about God's concern, but human concern. God, you prayed, you ask him to send, help us in COVID-19. And then he sends a vaccine, and now you want to throw up your hand like, I'm not turning south. That was too quick. Well, if they still be trying to get the vaccine, you'll be saying, what's taking them so long? You can't be satisfied. And let me get back to Peter so I can close this thing out. those three verses are of great significance to how quickly the three verses I just read you. Jesus said that he needed to go in and to Jerusalem, he's going to be crucified. And then Peter turned around and said, "Oh no, Lord." And then Jesus said, "Well, get behind me, Satan." It shows how how quickly we can allow our mouth, our tongues, to get in our way. Peter begins by using what we, or at least me anyway, I call Christianese. He calls Christ Lord. He trying to think biblically, spiritually, theologically. You know how it is. Walk like a duck, quack like a duck, look like a duck, it must be a duck. Talk like a Christian, walk like a Christian, act like a, then it must be a Christian. No. And yet at Peter's best attempt at seeking to, and that's all he was doing, he was trying to shield and protect Jesus. But when he finished, Jesus called him the devil. So obviously, you can use the word Lord and yet be talking straight from the devil. Woo! Now, but look, Matthew 16:15-17. But you, he asked them, this is before Peter makes his statement. But this is before, same chapter, but before. But you, he asked them, who do you say that I am? Because Jesus had sent out the disciples. He said to them, who do men say that I am? They said, oh, John the Baptist, some say Elijah, some say this. He said, but who do you say that I am? Simon Peter, here's Peter again, answered, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God. Jesus responded, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, because flesh and blood did not reveal this to you, but my Father in heaven. That was verse 17. But now in verse 23, Jesus called him a devil. See how quickly our mouths can get us in trouble? But when Peter agreed with Jesus, he was blessed. But when he spoke out of sync of God's will, he became a mouthpiece for hell. Why? Because he revealed a heart that lacked faith in what God said to be true. And when you come to understand that your words have the power to invite either God or Satan into a conversation, you will want to watch your mouth. And then Jesus said this in verse 24, just after he rebukes Peter. He said, if anyone wants to come with me, he must deny himself, take up his cross, and watch his mouth. Well, and follow me, is what he said. To make Christ the Lord of your lips, you have to deny your soul's desire to have its way in what you say. When God sees your pride, he backs away from you. When he hears your mouth, he backs away from you. When you sing praises to him on Sunday and start cursing other folks out on Monday, he backs off. And now let me go back to the book of James one more time before I close. We find the most potent passage on the tongue in God's view of how we often use it. James 4:13-16. Come now, you who say today or tomorrow we will travel to such and such a city and spend a year there and do business and make a profit. Yet you do not know what tomorrow will bring, what your life will be. For you are like vapor that appears for a little while, then vanishes. Instead, you should say, if the Lord wills, we will live and do this or that. But as it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. And we're going to talk about that arrogance again next week in a different light. What is the problem here? What is wrong with our thinking? Our thinking is we look at our accomplishments. We are bragging about, well, I'm going to do this today or tomorrow. I'm going to go here. I'm not saying you don't plan, because Sharon and I just got through talking about getting our vacation plans coincide with hump day and all that. But that doesn't mean we don't plan, but we need to realize that if it's the Lord's will, she'll go there and I'll go here. And that's our confidence. We don't have any control. See, and when we don't leave room for God to interrupt our plans, we set ourselves up to become sorely disappointed, because He will interrupt your plans. He will intervene in your plans. There is no such thing as planning independently of God, because He is the one who controls the outcome. And in your printed lesson, I have here survey your speech. I'm begging you, please do, and look at the homework assignment you got for your speech. Survey your speech. Take a look at your speech. And then remember this, what Mama said. Mama said, watch your mouth. Next week, we're going to talk about what Mama said. Mama said, God don't like ugly. See you next week.